Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another strange Saturday Super Show. We're finally kind of back, I think, hopefully, to doing things on our normal schedule. So, about 2 videos a week, which is very good. But today, we're going to be talking about Happy, a 4 issue very strange miniseries by writer Grant Morrison and artist Derek Robertson. There's also letterer Simon Boland on this and colorist Richard Clark. This is an odd story about a man named Nick Sachs, who's an ex-cop, who's now a hitman who basically has a hit that he's being paid for on, I think they're called the Fratelli brothers, right? I
Yeah,
believe
something
that's
really.
their name. Yeah. So he kills the three of them, but it turns out there's an extra, what he thinks is an extra brother, which is basically there's a fourth dude, and this dude tells him the passcode for where money is hidden before Nick still murders this man who is pleading for his life. Nick gets shot in this kind of encounter, and he wakes up in a mob hospital, and he is starting to see a strange blue horse that is pleading with him to help him save a little girl that's in trouble. And as you can imagine, Nick is quite. He finds this quite odd that there is a blue horse that he is now seeing and interacting with. But essentially, the mob, kind of at the orders of a guy named Mr. Blue, who's kind of the main antagonist here, try to go after Nick to find out what the password is to this to the money that has been hidden, and they all want the money. And so this blue horse helps Nick kind of escape from the hospital, and basically he wants Nick's help to save this girl. Nick goes through the series really not wanting to help him and not wanting to save this girl. He just wants to get away as these uh, mob members, including his paid off ex partner and affair partner, are all after him. And eventually, we kind of find out that Heidi has been kidnapped by this evil Santa Claus who has a bunch of children that he's going to do very, very bad things to on a live stream for very, very bad people. And Mr. Blue's involved with that as well. So eventually, Nick finds out that this girl, by the way, this blue horse keeps telling him that he is the little girl's imaginary friend. And Nick's the only other person who can see him. And eventually, we find out that this is because Nick is actually the father of this girl, despite the fact that he did not know that he had a daughter. And so Nick eventually decides, okay, it's my daughter. I should probably do something. So he goes. He saves the day is maybe a strong word. He bumbles his way through this situation, and ends up being shot in the end as well. But luckily, he stops the children from being, uh, I don't know if I could say that on YouTube without us getting in
Yeah,
trouble. So
probably not. Yeah.
without,
Stops the live
yeah.
stream before it happens.
Yeah. Stops the
Yeah.
bad things from happening. But I think that's the general gist. There's a few other
Yeah.
little like twists in there, like his ex wife. We kind of see a bit about her and him kind of growing apart, and him cheating with his cop partner, and then the mob trying to pay them both off, and him kind of saying no, his partner saying yes, all that stuff. But that's kind of the general gist of the 4 issue mini. It was a wild ride. Katie,
Yeah.
how'd you feel about said wild ride?
So I think this is a book where it's like really not my beat. Like we've talked about how much I enjoy like pulp mystery noir. The
Yeah.
kind of loner, fucking shit up cop. Less my jam. It's more Die Hard than I don't even know what to use my noir example, whatever. Uh
That's a good question.
like
I don't have anything off the top of my
much
head.
less. They keep saying like, oh yeah, he's one of the best detectives ever, and like all we're seeing is him being like a very accomplished killer, which is, a skill in its own right, but I think a bit
detective
less
shit at the end.
interesting. A little bit. Uh,
Yeah.
it's mostly the horse.
So,
Um, so, like, not my type of book personally, where it's really with, you know, uh, without trying to sound dismissive, where the point of the book is a lot of, like, violence and gratuity. I'm just like, okay, this is fine. Uh, just not my particular cup of tea.
push back on that being the point of the book. I think that the book has themes and messages going on. I think that that's the heavy content of the book, but I don't think that's the point of the book.
I mean, I wouldn't say that it's like, Morrison's masterpiece.
That's unfair. I think you're being a little unfair to the book here. I think you are being a little dismissive and unfair to the book here. Like I
I mean,
don't
I
think that
am
this is a
very
book that's
happy to
just
hear your
I don't think that this is a book that's just trying to be like gratuitously violent. It is gratuitously violent, but I don't think that's like, the only point to it. I think that it's a story about a guy who is in, kind of has fucked up his own life in a lot of ways and is looking for some form of redemption. And then we have kind of a symbolic, character that represents, kind of his tie to his daughter that he didn't even know that he had. And kind of we see the way that this daughter influences him to essentially finally get his redemption in some way, but then also kind of it's kind of open ended if he dies or not. But I get the vibe that he's dead at the
I
end of
think he's
this.
certainly dead.
Yeah, but obviously he dies within that. So yeah, I think it's unfair to dismiss this book
I'm
as having
I'm gonna
no
push back on
depth
what
to it.
you said a little bit though. I don't think he's someone looking for redemption. I
He's
think
not looking
redemption
for
is
redemption.
forced upon him. Like, I
I
don't think he wants to be redeemed. We see throughout the book that he just wants to die, essentially. He, like, keeps
yeah.
baiting people to try to kill him, which, like, is a horrible mental state to be in. I'll give him that, and I'll say that at the end of the book, I think that the only, like, he does the the redeeming thing of not going to save his own ass and instead goes and saves a bunch of children from the live stream. And it's like, okay, sure, that I guess we can call that redemption, but I feel like his only like real kind of character moment of redemption is like when he talks to his daughter and it's just like, I'm a friend of your mom's. It's like, okay, sure, take that moment. I feel like it wasn't enough of like a throughout the book growth. It just felt like it was only there at the very end, which made it feel like a very kind of hollow redemption for me because we get like 3.5 issues, or I'm sorry, like 2.5 issues of him actively just running away, and it's not like in that we're seeing these little moments of like groundwork being laid. It's like 2.5 issues of what I would call just kind of like actiony fluff, where it's like, let's do
I
all
still
of
I
these
think
fun kills and stuff, which is like a totally
I think you're
fine
missing
thing to
though,
do.
like what's between that, which is a guy who's just so fucked up mentally and has this fucked up, like there's so much I think going on there with like Happy trying to pull him out of the state, and you just see him like doubling down and using his, I guess, imaginary friend. I was gonna say new power, not really a power, but this imaginary friend in ways like the poker game where he's like taking advantage, and you see him like manipulating Happy, and then finally Happy leaves because of that. And then we see him have to like essentially he encounters this he goes to a priest who, which I thought that was, I get very sick of uh like Christian pedophile jokes and priest jokes like that, because it's so play. I think we've talked about the Christian like
I think
satire
so
stuff in
too. Yeah.
it has got to be somehow done even more in comics than it is in any other medium, and it's just very played out. But even with that, I thought that was well done in like you see him go there kind of looking for an answer and not getting it in the way that he expected, but it still does lead him to being able to get Happy back. But the point that I'm making is just because he's not going through a redemption arc doesn't mean that the book isn't doing anything but violence. Like I
I
think that
mean,
you're
that's
in two
fair.
absolutes here.
Sure.
That do not match up. Like there is a lot going on through the first couple issues that isn't just action and brutality. Like there's a lot of interaction between him and Happy. There's a lot on
which I
kind
would
of
say is mostly like violent interaction, even if it's not, gunshots. It's mostly just him calling Lucky stupid or Happy
yeah.
stupid and calling people cunts. And it feels very, the fact that it's like 2.5 issues of that before he like gets the reveal that Haley is his daughter, and he starts to like use that violence for good, I suppose you could say. Uh I just, I wasn't a big fan of the bulk of the book being what I felt to be kind of fillery and just like, I don't know, explosions in a figurative sense. Just like, murder and violence and combat, which is like, again, a fine thing for a book to be. It's just not my cup of tea.
And like I said, like it's there, and I do enjoy that it's there. But I think that it's unfair to hand wave it as all being that, because then I tell you like this other thing is there, and you're like, yeah, but that's still like no, him arguing with somebody and blowing it is not still gratuitous violence. Like there is a that is something else, you
Right, but
know.
it is
So
still like essentially like edgy page filler to me. Like he's not saying different things in most of these scenes, I would argue. Most of the times that he's interacting with Happy don't change anything. We see him argue with Happy several times, and it's like, okay, they're just, having this same conflict. And then eventually Happy leaves. But every time they interact before that, it's very like the same to me.
it's
Like
basically
he
one issue
manipulates
because
him with the,
Happy isn't in the vast majority of issue one. So you're basically talking about issue two here, because then in issue three is when
I
we
mean,
kind of get things to
sure,
start to change. But
but
that's
issue
not just
one also
okay.
isn't, if the entirety of their relationship is just most of the same, and then there's like a very abrupt heel turn when it's like, oh, it's your daughter. I just don't think that this book is doing much for me.
Fair. I'm just trying to push back on the hand waving of it all being gratuitous, and then the thing of like it's him and Happy for three issues doing the same, because it's not, because Happy's barely in the first issue, and then it's issue two is where they're kind
I
of
will also
because
say
issue
I
one is
read it as a
essentially the
collected
establishment of
edition.
the.
So
I
my
did too, but
issue
there's
guessing
the
is,
breakups between them. There's the breakups between them. You get those like full pages of
I had the deluxe edition that did not have
Does
those.
that not have breakups? It has like those like
No, there
blue. You didn't have those like full blue pages with like the little happy. Oh, okay. So issue one's basically like the establishment of who he is, right? And then you get the hospital stuff kind of at the very end of that. If I can't remember if you get all the hospital stuff there. I don't think you get all of the hospital stuff there, but you could have gotten all the hospital stuff there. Issue two is kind of the
Yeah, as I was
reluctant
going, I was looking at like
and
page numbers and trying to figure out the
yeah.
breaks, and they weren't super clear in the collected edition.
Yeah, so basically to hospital, then issue two is essentially like issue two is mainly what you talk about with just like Happy continually trying to get him. I think the poker scene comes in there too. And it's him just being like, nope, no interest. Okay, you know what, Happy, if you do this for me, I'll help you. No, actually, I'm lying. That's mainly issue two. Then issue three is I believe where oh, do we get Happy?
The
I think Happy leaves
train.
at the end of it. Yeah, we get the train, and then I think Happy leaves at like the end-ish of issue three, and then issue four is like him going to the priest. I think I'm trying to remember the exact breaks now. The issue one to two break was the clearest because it is the moment where I think it's very like clearly
That
an issue
tracks.
break.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah.
that being
Anyway,
said, I feel like this book was very, I feel like the part of the book that I was interested in was Nick's character growth, and I feel like his character growth is very backloaded. Like
which
we
is
get
fair.
a
I
lot
don't
of
think.
stuff
Yeah,
at the
yeah.
front before he has those moments of realizing that like he does want to save these kids.
I agree with that. I don't think that he has like a fully fleshed out arc that's like very engaging or
Mhm.
particularly I don't want to say well done, but
It's not like
particularly
the
well
focus.
crafted. Yeah, yeah. I think that a lot more is kind of on the interaction between him and Happy, which I think is some level of either like, okay, this is his daughter, this is his inner child, or however you want to, look at it. It's like kind of a more, you know, heroic voice in his head that's trying to like touch something in him that we're kind of being led to believe doesn't exist at all until we kind of finally get that moment, which is in the train where we find out that it's his daughter, and then that kind of finally pulls through to him, and you get him to kind of use, maybe even you say like it's his past or whatever, like the cop self or whatever in there. But in any case, I think that it's that, like, it's supposed to be kind of, the book to me feels like it's a tug of war between like him and Happy, and we're just kind of watching this tug of war the entire book until finally at the end, in that final issue, you get him kind of deciding to save his daughter from evil Santa Claus, which is a wild villain, by the way. Definitely
Yeah,
also fits
one
the
thing that
strange Saturday
I
Super Show.
really enjoyed about this book was like one the like overall concept I think is neat, like the idea of his estranged daughter essentially reaching out to him via this thing, which my only gripe with it is that I wish that there was less concrete evidence of Happy being like physically there. Like he's able to help with the card game, and
I
then
agree.
he, in a scene that's like a double page splash that I really enjoyed, he like went and found all the other imaginary friends, and they all
Oh, that's
uh
fantastic. I
yeah,
really
they
like
all
that
took down
climax moment.
Santa.
Yeah.
Um and I do wish that we had like a little bit less of that concreteness with him, just so we could have a bit more of that ambiguity of like whether or
I'd
not
agree with
he
that for
exists.
sure. Yeah.
Um but that being said, I really, really like the concept of it, and I do think that it is best executed in a kind of like edgy book like this, where it's like the imaginary friend isn't cute. Like he's kind of gross looking because that's kind of like the vibe. Like they're
Yeah.
not making him a chibi horse. He at one point
It's just like the way that he's rendered in this like realism that makes him so uncomfortable. Because I feel
mhm.
like his
Oh yeah.
design is that like cheap. Like I feel like if you transferred him to another art style, but with like the same, proportions and
Yeah.
general, design, he could be really cute. It's just the
Mhm.
way that he's like rendered in this realism world that makes
Yes.
him so uncomfortable to look at.
They do such a good job, and I think that a bunch of that is also with the coloring. There are
Yeah.
not many bombastic colors in this book on purpose.
No.
Like even the like red and blues of police sirens are a little muted, and like Santa's red outfit is pretty muted as well. And then bold, saturated blue for our imaginary friend Happy. So I think that he's really well executed in this format, and I think that it's a really cool idea. And there are a lot of like really great kind of just moments in this book. And yeah, I think that Santa being murdered by a bunch of imaginary friends is certainly one of those. I really liked when they were on the train and he shot the dude, and the woman's son is like terrified. And he's like, "What? Haven't you ever seen someone's pacemaker explode before?" I think that was a really well done scene. Um,
Yeah, that was fun.
yeah, I think that there were a lot of really fun moments in this book that are the moments where the kind of uh violence or edginess comes to a bubbling over that are really really effective and delightful.
I just this is random, maybe not the the greatest thing for a podcast discussion, but I want to throw this out because I don't know because obviously I said the name at the top, but I don't know if it is one that actually clicks for you. Do you recognize the artist? You've only read one issue, I believe, of what this
Is
artist is
he
from,
is
but
he the one from The Boys?
he is. He's the artist from
Yeah,
The Boys. Yes, yes, nice. I thought it was very
definitely.
distinctive. That's why I figured I'd throw
Yeah,
it to you. I think he has a very
like I
distinctive art
did not
style.
know that. I guessed that based on how
Yeah.
it looked and felt.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and when we briefly talked about The Boys, I don't think we had enough time to go into it. But like that was one of my
Yeah.
gripes with The Boys book as well, where I was like, a little much on the uh
The gratuitous, yeah,
yeah. Which
violence.
is again
Yeah.
totally fine, just not for me.
I just like the reason why I want to touch on it. I know you haven't read quite as much of The Boys as I have.
I've read one issue.
Yeah. But I've always enjoyed it's Derek, right? Derek Robertson, I believe is yeah. So I've always enjoyed Derek's art to some extent, but I think there's like a lot of growth here. Like it's still distinctively his, but I think the
Mhm.
art here is stronger than The Boys, like overall. Like I enjoy The Boys artwork, but I think this on like the way that this is laid out and the way that like the motion's actually done through this and like the
Mhm.
consistency of the character models, which I think is something that sometimes is a little bit not there in The Boys, like is just a lot stronger here. Like I really like what he does here. Like there's scenes in the snow that look just gorgeous with like the
Yeah.
snow everything. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out because I think from a artist who I already enjoyed, like this just seems like tremendous growth jumping to reading this, which I think is like a decade after The Boys. I want to say 15 years after The Boys, something like that. Like this is I think like early 2010s, and I don't know if The Boys is like late 90s or early 2000s, but it's in that
I
pocket,
think
I
it's
think. So
2000s. I could be wrong.
okay,
It
so
also could be a
that
difference of like Dynamite and Wildstorm.
yeah, so like a 10-year jump and 10 years well spent is what
Yeah,
I wanted to throw out
we
there
love to see
here.
growth.
Yeah.
So how did you just in general find the book? I gave my general thoughts and we
Yeah.
kind of spiraled, but we didn't get your general thoughts.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I enjoy it. I wouldn't like put it on, um, like a top books ever list of mine, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I thought the dynamic between Happy and it's Nick, right?
Mhm.
I'm the worst with names. This is why I
Good
like it
old
when they say
Nick
the names on like
Sachs.
every page because I am the worst at names. Yeah, the dynamic between Happy and Nick I think carries a lot of it in kind of the way that other characters react to that. Like I just like that dynamic of when somebody can see somebody and then somebody else can't. I think that's fun. Um the humor actually lands a lot more in this than I think I would have expected it to,
Right?
because I can get I can be somebody who gets very annoyed by comedy and comics, but I think this book is just kind of built to be that, so it never really bothers me, and I'm
Mhm.
always kind of enjoying it. And yeah, I like the resolution. I think the first and the last issue are the strongest, in my opinion. I think you hit on some of the right stuff where like the middle does kind of drag a little bit being the same thing, but I think that there is a little bit more going on to what they're doing there. Even if maybe it doesn't all hit at all points, but I think you also hit the nail on the head with the concept just being so strong and
Yeah.
that kind of carrying a lot of this. So yeah, it's the concept, the dynamic, and then I think the conclusion, like you said, maybe isn't fully earned, but I think it's a very strong conclusion. Like I like
Agreed.
the way that this wraps up. So I think those points carry it to being something that I quite enjoy. But I don't think you're entirely off base with some of your criticisms.
Yeah, no, I think we have an odd perspective as people who have read what like 40 deaths outside of the context of their uh larger storylines. I feel like
Yeah.
if we were to just read issue 4, I would have
You'd
like I
be
think that
like,
it's a
oh my
really good
god,
conclusion. I don't think that
it's a
it's
great
quite earned by
conclusion.
the rest of the book. So like
It's a
if we
great
were to just
conclusion.
read it in a vacuum, I'd be like, that is a very good death. That's a very good conclusion.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's a very well written conclusion. I dig it so much.
fully agree.
Again, he had like the 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 very sudden turn, which is where kind of my gripe with it comes in.
Yeah,
But if they had built up to that, I think that it would have been like phenomenal. Because
yeah.
the
I
work is
definitely
there
think there
in the
could have been
actual
more with the
conclusion.
character
So
arc. Yeah,
yeah,
like
you know,
I don't disagree with the character work with the character arc not being kind of fleshed out, but I do think there were other things going on
for
that
sure, yeah.
uh, definitely
Um,
deserve to be
I
talked
feel
about, which
bad
we did.
pulling
I'm
up
not going to
another
go back
gripe.
into the
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah
I feel
yeah
bad pulling up another gripe, but I just it happens. Sometimes you have more gripes than not gripes with the book. I don't love the I don't love the daughter reveal. Like I think that if it happened earlier and then like maybe he was still like that's not my kid or something and then like maybe he had an interaction with his wife or his ex-wife or
I
something
did
then
expect the ex-wife to come in at some
right?
point. Yeah,
Especially
that
since
was something that
her
felt
daughter's abducted. Even if it was like an
yeah
interaction between her and the ex partner in law and Farian. even if it was them interacting or
I'm
something.
sorry, partner-in-law?
Philip, the opposite of partner in crime.
Ah, I see, I see, I see.
There we go.
I was thinking like in-laws, and I was like, how are you connecting that? I was like, they had an affair. I don't know how you get to in-law from having an affair.
It was a legally binding affair.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, even if there was some interaction with her more, I think that the giving him more of a like more than a biological reason to be like, yes, I will go save all these kids. I think that that could have gone a long way as well because it's a little bit rough for it to, or even if he like had a relationship with his daughter beforehand and it's like, oh, it's because it's a person I care about, not just because it's, you know, my
I agree with you to
seed.
some extent. Yeah, I wanted one of two things, which are like one was him having known his like when the reveal first came, I thought it was gonna be that he had a daughter and he was like a deadbeat dad, and this would be like his chance to like kind
Mhm.
of pull it back from that. So I agree with that. But the other thing, which kind of I created in my head as I read, because I was like I would have liked it to be like kind of it goes in hand in hand with like if they had played Happy more as like unsure if he's real or fake. Like I
Mhm.
would have liked it to be a little bit more ambiguous on if like he was convincing himself that this was his daughter, and like there's not actually
Yeah, I
enough
think that would
evidence
have been
there
a
that it's
cool
his
thing
daughter, but he
too.
knew like his wife was pregnant at one point and he wasn't sure if she had the baby or not, but something is there that kind of connects it, and he's like convinces himself that it's his daughter, but it's not
Mhm.
100% sure. I thought that could have been cool too. So that I'm just throwing
Agreed.
out the kind of couple ways that I saw it that could have been cool for the character. I agree with you that on I think on paper it works better than in actuality with the way that they executed it,
Mhm.
because it is a little bit just like now you have this biological reason with this character who you haven't actually interacted with. So yeah, I think either a past connection or something, whether it was like you, if it was built up more and he denied it, or what I said with it being like he convinced himself, like something that then extended that a little bit, I think would have
Yeah.
absolutely been nice.
But that being said, the mechanics of the reveal I actually really liked because I believe it's the same issue. Again, forgive me if the collected edition throws me off. But we have
Yeah,
the
yeah.
flashback of his wife where the mob knows about his affair, and because he won't go on their payroll, they send the evidence of it to his wife,
I thought that
and she
that
leaves.
flashback in general was just
I thought
handled
yeah, the
really
flashback
well
was
structurally,
really
really
well done.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that kind of like moment of uh her walking out the door and the pregnancy test in the garbage can. And it's one of
Hmm.
those things where you're like, "Oh, you're showing me this for a reason?" Oh shit, his daughter is one of the captured kids, and then they have like the like written out reveal that his daughter is one of the kids. And I thought that was an incredibly well done kind of like precipice and fall.
Yeah, that's the same issue. I just went there to look at the issue breaks. Yeah, this issue breaks after like,
Mhm.
so you go through that, he like gets off the train and then sees like the happy feather, and then there's kind of that scene of all the kids, and then it's Mr. Blue, right? I'm getting that right?
Yeah.
Mr. Blue, it's kind of the reveal that Mr. Blue's working with the Santa is like the end of that issue.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's all the same issue. Go flashbacks, train, leave train, evil Santa Claus connected to Mr. Blue, and that's kind of how that issue concludes. Yeah,
Yeah, it's another one of those things where there's really good moments that I liked a lot.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to hit on? I think I've said most of my piece here.
Yeah, there's one other thing which I'm trying to remember because I know that I've read like a lot of Grant Morrison's JLA run, and I'm trying to remember if this was a problem in that as well. I feel like in this book there was a weird. I'm not gonna call it. It's not a pacing issue quite. I'm just talking out loud to try to figure out what it is. It's almost like a very granular. I'm gonna call it a little bit of like an editing issue where I feel like there were a number of moments where they would like jump from one, freeze frame to the next, as you do in comic books. And I feel like we were just missing like one in between frame. There's a lot of stuff where I'm like, oh, did I miss something? And then I look back and it's like, oh no, I just have to like put the pieces together, which is like fine. I was able to put the pieces together every single time. But it was like, oh, I feel like there was a missing piece. Just like
Yeah,
a little
Grant
in
Morrison
between
has
frame
like
for some things.
a very interesting writing style that involves a lot of that like kind of
Mhm.
moment to moment jumping, and like just like sometimes even within the same page where it'll be like kind of moments like
Yeah.
this had kind of multiple moments where speech bubbles like wouldn't have tails and would just kind of be like peppered throughout these like freeze frames that we were jumping
Mhm.
between, and I do think sometimes that was like you would kind of take a second and be like, okay, yeah, this is what's happening. Like you, I think it was always figure outable, but there were a couple times that it did give me pause where I had to just stop and actually like think about where things were
Yeah.
going instead of it like instantly being recognizable, if that makes sense.
It does, it does. So that was like my final little gripe. It was just an odd writing thing that I don't remember uh having problems with in other of Morrison's books, but it also may be that I wasn't, preparing to talk about them in depth. So it wasn't stuff that jumped out to me at the time.
Have you read Final
But yeah,
Crisis? I
that's
think
all
there's
I
some of
have.
that in Final Crisis.
Mhm.
But anyway,
That's
yeah,
all I
that's all
have
I've got
on
too.
Happy.
I think that I enjoyed it. I think it's fun. It's definitely I think cut from a similar cloth to the boys in stylistic sense. So if that's something that you enjoy, I think that this is a good place to jump to. It's also got kind of your classic Grant Morrison trippy, weird vibe. So if that's something you enjoy, also something that might be for you. But if you're looking for maybe like a great character arc, like Katie said, that's not really what's here. But there's some other cool stuff here, and there is a TV show too. So I haven't seen that, but that's the thing. So
Yeah. Well, rad. Um, Thanks so much for joining us on this strange Saturday. And we'll, of course, have an episode up on this coming Wednesday with our regular polls and
we
regular
will.
programming. And we had an episode this past Wednesday. Like Jay said earlier, we're getting back to our regularly scheduled programming. Hopefully, 2
Finally,
episodes a week. Yeah. Um, but that's gonna be a wrap on the Strange Saturday. So
so as
we'll see you
always,
next week.
hopefully we'll see you next week. Comic Geeks.